change from the focus on KATEK to speak to you about more industry trends and issues in the industry. You've obviously just done an excellent job portraying your organization. Now let's talk about the field in which, and I get it where you don't like just the traditional EMS, and you said before you don't like the name of the industry, so to speak. So bear with me. First of all, one of the outcomes of the COVID pandemic seemed to be an acceleration of trends such as automation and digitalization. How do you view those two as having an impact on the industry?
I think honestly, in terms of automation and digitalization, I don't see that the pandemics is really, kind of accelerating this in our industry or pushing or whatever. I don't see this honestly right now. I don't see this. I mean, because the need to go, especially in the high cost countries, to go to the highest level of automation you can do, to go into digitalization, with regards to more and more processes. Like even accounting, etc., etc. I mean, that's a given fact, and that's happening in our industry anyway. And I would say those companies who are growing and competitive, I mean, that's their daily business to do this. The only thing which is, I think, a little bit the wrong way in our industry, if we talk about automation, digitalization, and so on, we mostly only focus on what's happening in production, or maybe also material supply and logistics. But I mean, that's where all the focus is, because I mean, that's what we know best. And so you focus on and do. What I think is much more important is to think about how the interfaces and the automation between our industry and the customers will change. When you have a completely different generation of, let me say, purchasers or R&D people sitting in your customers' companies, and this is something where I think we need to refocus a little bit, instead of, I mean, doing automation of the last bits and pieces in the last factory in wherever. You should also focus on what can we do there. But because we are not a customer driven, and I have to say this, we have not been a really customer driven industry in the past. Of course, again, we've been a production focused industry. The focus on digitalization, automation is always on production, and I think, honestly speaking, that's wrong. That's wrong, and we are prepared to do something here. So we are kind of about to acquire also the share of a very small company, which I would regard as being active in, I would say, kind of online platform for fabless prototyping of PCBs and PCBAs. So in order to come closer to this end, I mean, you have to start at some point of time, and then to learn and bring much more of this into the rest of the company. It's also kind of a culture change project, I would say, in order to bring in this completely different focus, that it's not all about production. There are even companies who are active and who will gain market shares in the future who don't even have a production side. They are fabless, and it's working, and they are in the market, and they are growing. And if you're looking into some other in the US, you have also some companies like this, but we do have also in Europe. But the traditional, now I can say, EMS industry, I think is has not really, in mind that, I mean, something especially is happening there and will happen there,
Yeah.
and we have to do something about it. If not, maybe we will be obsolete in some years.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good perspective. And I've heard that sentiment shared by some people in the industry, but you're right. The vast majority are focused on the production side because that's what they know and that's where they see the benefit coming. The other issue I want to ask you about is, here in the United States, I guess North American centric here, there's a lot of talk about reshoring and within the industry, right? That's for a lot of reasons having to do with China, having to do with pandemic, and it was probably developing that way anyway. And then there's a whole issue around national security interests and supply chain that are related with this. How is that in Europe? How is that playing out over there? Are you seeing a similar trend? Is it different? What do you think?
I think we are seeing the same. What I just, inside out or outside in, observe in the US is that in the US, you are doing this much more consequently. Meaning, I mean, in the area of the companies, of the customers, that's a clear trend which is also happening here. But I mean, there's also some kind of industrial logic behind where you have to change something, and maybe even the government has to play a certain role in order to support this. This is something where I'm seeing that, some players and also the government is starting to act in the US. Here, I'm only seeing a lot of discussions, but not really doing something. What happens in reality is that there's a lot of pressure in a lot of industries here now in order to rethink the supplier strategy. And if you are, let me say, in the supervisory board, and you are supervising the executive board of a company, now you will get nasty questions. I mean, how you going to survive in future if you source, for instance, 100% of your electronics in Asia? I mean, with nasty, how can you do this? And then what happens now is that as a first step, there's a clear order to the executive board to at least bring in additional European players with at least 1/3 of the volume. And so that you can kind of, be a little bit more independent, that you can maybe shift if there's a crisis, that at least there's one, supplier also in Europe with, who has the, who knows the BOM, who knows the construction, who knows everything, so that you maybe can transfer something if something is really going wrong. So that's something which happens a lot right now. So it's whereas, I mean, in recent years, it was more an uphill battle. If one company, told the board, and by the way, we are, sourcing this in Europe, then the question was, hey guys, why don't you do this in Asia? It's much, much cheaper. Everybody's going to Asia. I mean, now it's the other way around. And that's something which is really, really changing. And I think the shock is so big, which happened now over the last, couple of quarters, that I don't think that's just kind of a short-term trend and then, everything goes the other way around. I think that's really something which changes the industry, and it's a very, very good time now to be in the market and to be capable to, get access to those additional opportunities.
Yeah. And another issue that's related to that, obviously, is the whole material supply chain issue. We've had challenges in the last year, but that is also that China has become the de facto factory for most, electronics material that are being assembled into boards, wherever that might be, right? And they then export that. So how do you view that challenge, and how is KATEK managing through these?
Yeah. I mean, that's honestly speaking, that's a huge challenge. And I mean, it all goes back to the largest wafer manufacturers like TSMC in Taiwan and Samsung, which was, by the way, government strategy in order to get this and to make them big. And I would say it played out. I mean, in Europe, we are always saying, please, no government mixing into business. They are not the right entrepreneurs. let them out, they don't understand anything. I mean, it turns out that sometimes, governments are taking the right decisions and now they stand where they stand. So, I mean, we are all dependent from those two players here, and that's one of the big issues which we are facing in the industry, and we are facing this to a large extent also at KATEK. So I mean, I myself, I would say every 2 days I'm in escalation calls with not with our customers. I mean, our managing directors can handle this, but with our suppliers, with Texas Instruments, with Cree, I mean, with all those, in order to make sure that, and I mean, pressure, of course, is not what really works, because they get pressure from everybody.
Yeah.
It's more kind of a give and take. I mean, let's have a partnership also, for the days after the crisis. I know it's hard for you, but I mean, if you have something, please help us, give it to us. And you are our partner also for the future. And so far, the impact, the negative impact in Q1 is very, very limited. Of course, it could have been even more. It was a good volume, a very good revenue, could have been even more. And the same in terms of EBITDA, because you are facing some extra cost, yeah. But I think the main difference now is that management, here has to spend a lot of time in order to handle this crisis with the customers, with the suppliers, and secondly, that the visibility and the stable forecast is right now really not possible. I mean, the visibility which we have in the supply chain, in certain of our key markets like automotive, e-mobility, renewables, healthcare, where we need all those kind of materials, is something like 2 to 4 weeks. I cannot tell you, after 4 weeks, whether, everything is standing still, or whether we still manage, like we did during the last 3 months, to get to some material. I'm pretty optimistic, but so far it worked quite well, but visibility is extremely low.
Yeah. You say you're optimistic. What does your crystal ball tell you? Are they working through, on the semiconductor side, these challenges by the end of this year? Is that into 2022? Yeah.
I think that mostly, this will last into the Q4. This will clearly last into Q4, but I'm pretty optimistic that with beginning of next year, we will be in, let me say, much calmer and quiet waters, especially in those industries or with those companies which can deliver a reliable forecast to the suppliers. I mean, what they hate right in the moment is all those kind of overstated forecasts. And what we are doing, for instance, we offer our suppliers, let's take all the bullshit out of the pipeline and what we order, and we even give you visibility into our end customer orders behind. We give you full visibility, no bullshit. We just order exactly what we need, not one piece more. And that's something which is playing out as well. So the better you can provide them with a really honest and reliable forecast, the better you will stand. And if you're not able to do this, then you will be in big problems even in 22.
Okay, thank you. So another issue the EMS, especially in the US, has been challenged with has been attracting and retaining talent, right? Getting people to work in this industry, because the skill sets are also changing, we've talked about some of that here. And it's a younger generation who are now, coming in and doing that. I know it's different in Europe because the work relationship is different in Europe, obviously, than it is in than it is in Asia. How is it over there? How do you view those issues?
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely difficult, especially if you look into into engineering, into also test engineers. That's really difficult. It's really difficult. I mean, I think one of the strategies is if you go I mean, into regions where you have many large players looking for the same kind of engineers. Normally you would say, or your intuition would be, don't go there, because I mean, everybody's then going to Mercedes and Bosch and Porsche and you name them all. But I mean, interestingly, the opposite is true. I mean, it's much easier for us to get access to the right engineers in this area. I mean, assistants in e-mobility. I mean, they are sitting close to Stuttgart, and everybody's telling me, how can you have, you know, your engineering offices there in Stuttgart? Because I mean, all the engineers, they are going to Daimler and Porsche and Bosch and all the others there. And I see, no. It's no. You have to rethink, because of course you have maybe 80% of the engineers, and they love to say to their family, I work for Daimler. I mean, beautiful, super. But you also have, you know, many really creative kind of all-rounder engineers, and they want to work for a much more agile, flexible, smaller, fast-moving company, and not being, you know, one of you know, several thousand engineers, but maybe, you know, one of 50. And that's the clear differentiator. So we get all the talents we need so far, you know, knocking on wood, because we are different compared to all those mega companies. So it's difficult, but we get there.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, you've been very generous with your time here, so I'm going to wrap that. I know it's evening time there, but still. Yeah. So in closing, what is your view for the next year, for both, for the industry and for KATEK? How do you see that? Are there challenges maybe I didn't mention that you think are worth mentioning or discussing here? What does your crystal ball again say over the next 3-4 quarters?
I mean, I think that those in Europe, those companies which now have survived the crisis will have some beautiful quarters if they can manage the material crisis the right way. And that's extremely important, because this has two aspects. The first aspect is that they, why ever, can convince the suppliers that they preferably work with them. This could be the size, or, you know, kind of a trust-based partnership for many years, whatever. I mean, that's the one thing. But I mean, the second thing is, what you cannot forget is that many players in our industries, I mean, as EMS, you are responsible for the material sourcing. So normally you are also responsible for the pricing. So if you are now a smaller or medium-sized EMS, but I mean, you are dependent from, let me say, 3 larger customers, and those customers, they are saying, look, don't, you know, that's your fault. You are responsible for material. Don't think you can give me the extra cost. So, and if this goes out of balance, I mean, you know, you will see a lot of EMS companies buying over the next, you know, couple of quarters. First, they had Corona with kind of, you know, on average, something like 7-10% downturn with fixed cost regression on the negative side, etc. And now you have the material crisis. And if they are dependent from some customers and they leave them alone, I mean, then they will be dead and they will be shaken out. So, did I say all of the EMS companies, all of the electronics companies, which can manage those 2 obstacles I just mentioned, they will have some beautiful quarters, because all the industries at the same time, they are booming. And I'm talking with many of my colleagues from other electronics companies, and they all have one in common: they have absolutely full order books. Book to bill is always, you know, far beyond 1. They cannot manufacture, develop everything they have in the order books. They could do sometimes, you know, double the revenue they are doing right now, but they don't have the capacity. They don't have the material. So everybody, you know, who's surviving this crisis now, I mean, will have beautiful quarters, ahead of them. That's my clear crystal ball and that's including KATEK.
Including KATEK. Well, thank you. That's a good crystal ball, I think, and that's a good optimistic message to end this interview on. I know you're always quite the gentleman. You're always very, very candid with us and very generous with your time. And what stood out for me today too is how you speak with such confidence about your business and what you're doing. And so I appreciate that. I'm sure our audience appreciates that as well. I wish you continued success, sir. We will be watching with great interest and hope when all of this craziness settles down that I can get back over there at some point and we can meet in person again. So
absolutely, Eric, absolutely. And I would love to be active and do business as well in Texas. I mean, as you know, we love doing meaningful M&A. So if you have a good idea in Texas, just send it over.
Okay. Well, after this broadcast, I'm sure my phone is going to be ringing. Set me up with Rainer, would you please? Very good. Rainer, again, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it, and we will stay in touch. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it as well. Always a super discussion with you. I really love it, and I'm already looking forward for the next one. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Eric, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.